Hi, my name's Nicole Brewster. I'm the president and CEO of Renforth Resources. Renforth trades publicly on the CSE under the symbol RFR and on the OTCQB in New York under the symbol Roger Frank Henry Roger Frank. I've been president of Renforth for a number of years, and we've had the privilege of making a few discoveries, developing an asset and selling it at a profit. And right now we're working on our very exciting Surimo battery metals district property in Quebec, backed by our Parbec gold deposit on the Cadillac Break beside the Canadian Malartic mine. My background, actually, in the industry, I was raised in the world of geology. My father's an exploration geologist who traveled the world through my childhood. My brother became a mining engineer. I became a stockbroker, but I was a stockbroker that focused on the capital markets, specifically the exploration industry, because that's what I grew up with. To me, I speak that language. And it's a passion. It's the role of discovery. It's creating value. It's being right at the very beginning of the value cycle. I became president of Renforth many years ago because as an explorationist, I and my company were owed a lot of money by Renforth. So we've worked through several assets. We've developed several things. We've kicked a lot of tires along the way. The entire time, neither the CFO nor myself have taken cash out of the company. We do believe in Renforth, we believe in what we're doing, and as a result, we get paid in shares. It's exciting. It's an exciting place to be in the market. It's one of the few industries that takes literally a field and demonstrates the value of the field and can grow a business and an industry from an empty field. So I was asked to sort of explain how do we create value from an empty field, and I'm actually going to tell you the story through our current Surimo district property. So the Surimo district property, let me be clear, it's vast. It's 300 square kilometers. It's a lot of land. It's almost 5 times the size of the island of Manhattan, and it's about half the size of the Greater Toronto region. Why do we have it? Well, we start our detective work on computers. We look through the historic documents the government of Quebec maintains, linked to a geographic point. We read those documents. We had land nearby. We're again still joined to the Canadian Malartic mine, which is a prospective area. It's on the Cadillac Break, which runs from Kirkland Lake to Val d'Or in Quebec, Canada's largest and most prolific gold structure. So we're looking in what's called a brownfield area. We're beside mines. So it's a prospective area. We already know that there's mineralization in the ground. So then we pour through the historic documents and we identify areas which have not been claimed by anybody that have historically documented mineralization. Now the neat part is, for example, at Surimo, we claiming is a process where you register rights to the land with the government, and it's subsurface rights you register, just the mineral rights. You can claim land, for example, under somebody's farm. We didn't do that, but you can. So we claimed land that had historic documentation of, for example, 0.2% nickel on surface. 0.2% nickel doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. Nickel is a commodity that's under intense pressure and absolutely critical to the, I feel, dawn of a new age we're at, which is the storage of energy and an effect to mitigate the greenhouse, global climate crisis. We're going to store energy in batteries, be it to power your house or power your car. So back to 0.2 nickel. Now, in the case of Surimo, that 0.2 nickel was uncovered in the 1980s, which seems like ancient territory, but I was a kid then, so it's not that long ago. But it was uncovered in the 1980s when they were looking for gold. So in the 1980s, nobody cared about 0.2 nickel. They didn't even care about low-grade gold. But we rolled down the road 40 years, and these commodities are much needed. We're facing a commodity crisis across the board. It's Surimo, we've got nickel, copper, cobalt, zinc, platinum, palladium. They're all under pressure. They're all required for the energy revolution we're at the dawn of. So we claim the land. We register electronically our interest in the land. That is an obligation. It's an obligation we enter into with the government of Quebec, whereby we agree to do a certain amount of work to develop the potential, the economic potential of the land, which we do by identifying the minerals present. We have to do a certain amount of work per year. We also pay a small fee to the government, like an administrative fee. So it's not a lot of money, but it's still, it's a relationship. So we keep up our end by exploring, which we're doing. We claimed land nobody cared about. We claimed it throughout 2020 and into 2021. I was assembling the property. So what do we have now? You know, a year and a bit, 2 years later, we have this 300 square kilometer property with 6 different areas of historically identified polymetallic mineralization. Polymetallic means more than one metal. So I tell people it's a basket of battery metals. And we go to the 6 different areas and we start our exploration on surface. We validate the presence of the minerals on surface. And in one area, which we call Victoria West, which is about a 6 kilometer long strike length. Strike length refers to the east-west linear length. It's a 6 kilometer long strike length of polymetallic, so all the metals present on surface, and we've been drilling. So we're opening a little window, a little tiny crack into what's under the surface. We stripped the overburden away. To do that, we chip the trees down to sawdust, and then we take away the overburden. We're fortunate there's very little overburden, between none to perhaps 3 meters of dirt is the non-technical term. We strip away the overburden. This lets us see the rocks as they present themselves on surface. We map it, we sample it. We demonstrated over 275 meters that we had consistent mineralization. Then we drilled right under that. We don't have those results yet, but visually we know that that surface mineralization continued as deep as 150 meters. So that's where we're at. That's full stop right there. That's where we're at Victoria West today. We will fly airborne geophysics. It's a completely different world, the world of geophysics, but fundamentally, metals resonate at different frequencies, expressed in colors, at different levels of magnetism. There's lots of really funky stuff done in the world of geophysics, and I'm far from an expert at it, but it gives us another look under the surface without having to strip or drill everything, and we will use that data to create new drill targets and continue to drill. So where are we going with this? We have to drill and drill and drill. We've drilled about 5,000 meters as it stands. We've drilled off 2.2 kilometers of our known 6 kilometers. So we have to drill the full 6 kilometers off. We have a 14 kilometer question mark to the east, but we're not even gonna get there for a little while. But we're gonna drill off the 6 kilometers, and then you bring in the engineers, the geologists. The role of the geologist is to model the shape of the mineralization underground using surface data, geophysics, drill data. Then the engineer comes in, and the engineer does the calculations to determine the volumes of metal within those shapes. Working together, the geologist and the engineer come up with the subsurface geometry and the amount of metal contained within the form, and that becomes a resource. That resource is presented to the reader pursuant to the rules of National Instrument 43-101 and its companion policy, which you can look up if you look up the Canadian Securities Act. And a 43-101 resource, which is how we refer to it, is a baseline. That's where you establish the value of the property. So you can see there's a lot of work that goes into it, but that's the path we're headed down, and we will establish the monetary value of that 6 kilometer slice of ground that's located outside of the town of Malartic, Quebec. We can drive to it with road access, and we have hydroelectric power lines from Rapide 2 and Rapide 7 to the south, which are both hydroelectric dams operating on the Ottawa River. It's exciting stuff, but that's how you create value. Then somebody will mine it, maybe not us though. So Renforth is in a good position right now. We're very well funded, and we actually have other assets I haven't even spoken to you about. Funded in terms as we sit right now, and I don't know when you're going to watch this, but we're sitting with more than $1 million cash in our treasury right now. We're also backed by our investment account, which has a value that exceeds $3 million of tradable securities. So you can see our cash and our near cash assets are pretty deep, but then we're even further backstopped by the fact that we own a gold deposit. It's called the Parbec Gold Deposit. It sits on 1.8 kilometers of the Cadillac Break, which is Canada's most prolific gold structure. We've only calculated our resource over a portion of that 1.8 kilometers. It's gold which starts at surface and is down to a depth of perhaps 300 meters. And it's next door to Canada's largest open pit gold mine. So it's very well positioned. It's positioned in what we call a gold camp, and that means along the Cadillac Break, to the east, to the west, back into Ontario and all the way through to Val-d'Or, Quebec, there are lots of operating gold mines. And gold mines are factories. The rocks come in the back door, they get crushed, processed, and converted to gold, which goes out the front door. And like any factory, they have to keep the rocks coming in the back door to push the gold out the front door. As mines deplete, it's easier, and I'm sure you've seen this if you've been reading financial press, it's easier for a gold mine to find additional ounces on Bay Street, which refers to downtown Toronto where the stock exchange used to be. It's easier for them to explore for ounces on Bay Street than it is in the woods. And what does that mean? It's called M&A, mergers and acquisitions, which is how a gold company frequently augments their ounce feed. They go looking for ounces nearby that they can mine and add to their own mine. It's much cheaper than sending their geologists, who are experts in the business of running a mine, out to do exploration, which is a very time and cost intensive and specialized set of skills. So Renforth, we're good at exploration. We're one of the few that put boots on the ground and start from an empty field. We don't run mines. So realistically, Parbec, in my regard, is another financial asset that at some point will be sold to in an M&A transaction and provide cash to explore Surimo with, because again, Surimo's huge. Lots of mineralization already known, much of it to be further developed. So I was asked to talk a little bit about battery metals. Let's start at the beginning. What do we call battery metals or EV metals or energy storage metals? There's lots of coins, lots of catchphrases out there, but we're talking about nickel, we're talking about copper, we're talking about zinc, we're talking about cobalt, platinum, palladium, and they're all at Surimo. There's actually gold at Surimo as well, and there's something else at Surimo we haven't even started to look at yet because we've had our hands full, but that's lithium. All of these metals are going into the dawn of a new age. We're at the age where we have to store energy. We have to store energy from the sun, or we have to store energy that was produced in a downtime when demand was lower, so that we can use that energy when demand is higher, or when you want to get in your car, you don't have to power it by fossil fuels, you can power it by batteries. We're trying to mitigate the impact we have on this planet. Now, current forecasts, you perhaps have heard, they're trying to keep climate warming down to a 2-degree target. That 2-degree target, if it's attainable, requires input of a lot of metal to create the energy storage device, the batteries that hold those metals. Maybe you've tried to buy a car in the last year and you haven't been able to buy it, either because there's been no chips, because they haven't had the metal to make the chips, or because they don't have the batteries. They don't have the cars built yet. The demands that energy storage is going to place on the available commodities are rendering all of them in critical short supply. So that's the first, just the technical demands. Then you look at the geopolitical risk of a lot of these metals. Cobalt's produced largely in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's produced by child labor. General Motors, in producing a car, they have ESG, they have environmental social governance criteria. They have to produce their product ethically. They can't use child labor. So what does that do to the cobalt coming out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo? Well, slowly that'll change. Slowly they'll improve their business standards. But until then, cobalt's in a critical supply issue. The U.S. Geological Survey recently published their list of critical metals. They identified risks within metals, and one of those risks is supply risk, and it's pinch point supply risk. So they have proposed adding nickel and zinc to their critical list of materials. Why? Well, because China owns most of the production, and they own a lot of the processing of these materials. Nickel's being produced largely in Indonesia. They've only just, and get this, today's day and age, just instituted requirements that they stop the offshore dumping of the tailings into the open sea, the open ocean. Sure, there's a deep trench. We don't know what's at the bottom, so let's just throw all of our tailings from our mining operation down there. What harm could that be? So Indonesia's trying to clean up their nickel production. Nickel is in a supply deficit. They're also trying to go to alternate sources of nickel. Nickel sulfide is what's required for Class 1 battery usage. Class 1 refers to purity. However, nickel laterite is where most of the nickel comes from, so they have to use more energy in order to produce the nickel required. They're using coal, so they're burning dirty fuel to create a green product. There's a fair bit of greenwashing going on, but the market's not stupid. They want to understand that these commodities are coming from places where they're responsibly identified, produced cleanly. The government of Quebec is very focused on their critical and strategic minerals, the value cycle, and the ESG values that go into producing. So you're going to start to see assets, I feel, like Surimo, which are in safe jurisdictions with responsible ESG practice, become much more desired by the end users. The value add work, the downstream work, it'll be done in the jurisdiction. North America does not have many mines to provide these metals. The influence of China in the commodities cycle is huge. They own a lot of mines. They take a lot of the production offshore. The world's realizing that that might not be the best thing. To be reliant on China for your nickel supply might not be the best plan that you could go forward if you're in the business of making batteries. So we're faced with a bit of a paradigm shift. We have to find the assets in North America if North America wants to use these metals. And the governments are aware of that. And the Canadian government, the province of Quebec, the U.S. Geological Survey, the U.S. government itself, they're all aware of the critical nature of our access to these metals. So, I mean, Surimo, I think we have the right metals, we're in the right place, and I think we're probably at the right time. What else can I tell you about Renforth? Well, Renforth is an exploration company at heart, so it means, well, we have a development asset on our hands, which is Surimo, and another development asset, which is our Parbec gold deposit, which we recently did a transformative 15,000 meters of drilling on. And we're starting to look at our structure and optimizing our resource and restating our resource. What else? We do exploration. We have exploration properties. I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to go into them. But that's our job. We take the empty fields and we start to look at them and demonstrate that they have value. Maybe we bring along partners. Maybe we sell them. But yeah, there's more happening at Renforth, and I mean, you know, I can talk and talk and talk about this, and I find it riveting. There's a point where I've talked enough, and that's why you don't hear me talk about our pure exploration. I mean, we could talk about the pure exploration, the lithium targets at Surimo. It's fascinating, exciting stuff. We've got pegmatites logged by geologists walking by who didn't bother to sample it because they weren't looking for lithium. That aside, there's exploration to be done at Surimo. It's 300 square kilometers. It's a lot of ground. So, you know, that's the story. Renforth. It's pretty aggressively managed. Every dollar is a prisoner at Renforth, and we put as many of them. We jam them all into the ground. So that's, you know. But why is that exciting? Well, I'll tell you. If Lady Luck's on our side, we drill a drill hole that hits. Things get really exciting really fast. Right now we're proving a large tonnage, low grade polymetallic deposit. So right now we're seeing something that's in the range of the 0.2 nickel, point something, say 5 copper, plus other metals, platinum and palladium. All of these metals have economic value that comes together to give us a nickel equivalent grade. And right now, based on the little we've seen, that's a low nickel grade. It's still a nickel grade that puts us amongst our peers. The Dumont deposit to the north, just outside of the town of Amos, was taken private by Waterton Private Equity and 2 funds they manage at a significant cost. Dumont is shovel ready. we're pretty much looking like Dumont. Canada Nickel, which has the Crawford property in Ontario, looks very similar. We can sit at the table with our peers. We haven't done as much work. Those stories have been around a lot longer than Surimo. But even as Surimo sits right now, with only 6 kilometers, which we've only drilled 2.2 kilometers, and we've only gone as deep as 150 vertical meters, we can sit at the table. And our story is only going to get better. We have a ton of work to do, and we've got the time and the money to do it. So watch us work. That's Renforth, watch us work.